Hi guys, welcome to class, to our Tuesday class. I'm going to go ahead and make this video basically kind of based on if we were actually in class today on Tuesday. I apologize that I had to cancel class, but the cool thing is I'm able to make this video for you and we can kind of simulate as though we were together in class. I know it's not the same because we don't get to actually touch each other and hug each other and, talk in a synchronous way. But hopefully, if you watch this video, if you're watching this video, it helps you to feel like you're on track with your research, to feel like, if you had any questions about what's happening this week, hopefully this video helps with that. So, let's start off. So I'm on the home page. I just wanted to say welcome back from your break. I hope you had a really wonderful break, that you were able to hang out with friends and family and enjoy a little time off, even if you had to work, but maybe just a little bit of time off from having to the everyday hustle and bustle of going to school. I know that on spring break we're all still working and reading and writing and doing work, but it's nice to not have the obligation of having to be at school. So hopefully you enjoyed your break. Now we're just jumping back into our research. We left off beginning kind of starting with research and the TED Talks and exploring the library database if you did the last couple discussions, and really just kind of seeing what conversations there are out there in the world. We see in the media, we listen on the radio about issues that are happening, whether it's the March for Our Lives or, whether it's bombing in Syria, whether it's inequality within the workforce, within union issues in another state. There's a lot of stuff going on that ties into this concept of justice. And so that's what we're doing with our research, is looking for those conversations. So we have 2 discussions this week, and I'll just, excuse me, I'll just click on them and we'll kind of go through them so that we can eliminate or alleviate or lessen any confusion. But again, both of these discussions for this week are focused on your research and really just, 1, building on your skill set, and 2, kind of understanding your research topic better by using an academic kind of inquiry-based type of research. So this is where we're asking questions. We're using questions to kind of guide our research, and there's a whole spectrum of types of questions you could be asking. There's, basic questions like, what are the gun control laws in the nation? How do they differ with states? What changes are being made in Florida based on the recent school shooting? There's levels and levels of questions. And the more you kind of go down that rabbit hole, the more your ideas, your understanding of a topic kind of opens up. And that's what questions do. They open us up to possible ways of seeing things. It's really a beautiful, wonderful thing. So I'll click on the first discussion. I'm going to try and keep my eye on the timer because these videos I'm only allowed to do 15 minutes and then they'll stop. So right now we're at about 3 minutes. So let's jump into the first discussion. So the first discussion is chapter 5 from They Say, I Say. And this chapter is titled, And Yet, discussing what you say from what they say. Distinguishing what you say from what they say. The entire point of this chapter is really making sure that when you're summarizing information from a source, that you make it very clear that the information that you're summarizing is someone else's view and not yours. So for instance, if I find this really great article on the Washington Post or in the New York Times, and there's an author, he or she is arguing about the recent walkouts, and they're explaining kind of the circumstances or the situation behind the walkouts that are happening nationwide regarding the Florida shooting. And there's this author who has a really great view, and I really want to kind of take his view or her view, and I want to summarize it, but I want to make sure that my reader knows that it's not my view, it's the view that I'm summarizing. So that's what chapter 5 is all about, distinguishing the author's view or the text that you're drawing on, whatever source it is, from your view. So it's really, really important to do that, because sometimes we'll read something and it will be so great and we'll just really want to take it and put it into our writing. And so it's really, really important that we make clear to our readers that those views are not ours, but that we're using them to further our own viewpoints. And so a good example of this would be Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham jail. He says some really beautiful, relevant things that are important today about equality and about fairness and about freedom and about community and about standing up for what's right. And so rather than steal his ideas, even though we usually do it unintentionally, I want to make sure that when I recapture Martin Luther King Jr.'s viewpoints, I make it clear that those are his views and that I'm in agreement with and would like to build on his views. So again, that's what Chapter 5 is all about, distinguishing your view, what you say, from what they say or what someone else, an outside source, says. So this discussion has quite a few tasks for you. Remember, this is a hybrid class, so it's not just jump on the discussion board and talk. It's jump on the discussion board and then follow the procedure for how you come to a really great idea when you post. And so there's 4 different things you have to do for this discussion. So I'll just kind of scroll down so you can see. There's 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So number 4, or the last thing that you usually do on a discussion, is responding to someone else. Some of you are missing that, and so it's really important that you read and respond to other classmates' viewpoints, because that's where the discussion gets really fun, because you're interacting with one another, we're sharing ideas, and we're responding. That's what makes it a discussion. If you're just posting and you're not responding to anyone else, you're not really making it a discussion. You're just kind of throwing an idea out there. A discussion requires back and forth, right? And this is one of the best ways that we learn to kind of understand topics and understand where we stand on an issue, because we start listening and we start hearing different views and we start kind of thinking, I didn't think of it that way. And that's how we formulate our opinions, based on facts and based on research and based on other viewpoints. So again, we're starting off this discussion by reading Chapter 5 of They Say, I Say. I'm just going to click on the link so you can see this is Chapter 5. If you don't have your book, let's see how many pages it is. So again, when you're reading, I want you to pay attention to the headings. So determine who's saying what in the text that you read. And I'll just read the beginning of the chapter so you kind of get a sense of what it's like. So if good academic writing involves putting yourself into dialogue with others, it is extremely important that readers be able to tell at every point when you are expressing your own view and when you are stating someone else's. This chapter takes up the problem of moving from what they say to what you say without confusing the readers about who is saying what. So we've already kind of looked at summary, and now we're going back into summary of someone else's views and then your response. So remember, they say and I say. So we have a heading here, determine who is saying what in the text that you read. You keep scrolling down to the second page, templates for signaling who's saying what in your own writing. Again, the templates are all throughout the book to kind of help us not only have the language of academic argument, of intellectual argument, but also to be able to make that move with our words. And so the templates are like training wheels. They're fun. You can play with them. The next section of the chapter is titled, But I've Been Told Not to Use I. And so many of us in writing classes have been told, do not use I. You can definitely formulate an argument, a really great argument, without using I think, I feel, gun control is bad, or gun control must be addressed. You can say gun control must be addressed. You don't necessarily have to say I think or feel, but in this section of the chapter, they're talking about it's okay to use that if you would like to. And then there's some templates if you decide that you want to mix first person with a template, one of these templates. Remember, you can do both. You can kind of state someone else's views and then jump in with your own viewpoint using first person, I think, I feel, or using a template that kind of switches into third person and takes out the I. Again, it's your choice. I always tell writers it doesn't matter which move you make as long as you're smooth about it, right? If your move is smooth, your reader flows along with you and there's no hiccups or bumps in the road, and so they don't get thrown off by what you're trying to say. That is the most important thing when communicating and writing. Is it clear to your reader your point that you're making? If the point that you're making isn't clear to your reader, then it's your job to smooth it out and guide them through. So again, as I scroll down, there's different examples of embedding voice markers. And so voice markers are the moves that are going to show your reader who is speaking, right? And so voice markers, here are some templates for that. And so that's the chapter. It's a pretty short chapter. There's a few exercises at the back. If anyone's interested for extra credit, you're more than welcome to do both of the exercises and post your responses on the extra credit discussion. Again, that is chapter 5. It's short. It's 5 pages. Totally manageable. I'm going to toggle back to the discussion. That was step 1. If you're more into the audio version, you want to listen to it as you read along, you can click on the YouTube video here. And what you're going to get is someone reading the chapter.
They say, I say, chapter 5. And you.
Again, you have that classical music in the background, and you have the person reading the book. If you want to follow along that way, you can, totally optional. And then the second part is for you to read and watch the presentation on chapter 5. So again, Prezi, if you're not familiar with it, is a free kind of, I don't know if it's considered open source, but it's definitely a free software for creating basically a PowerPoint, but it's a little bit different than a PowerPoint in the sense that it looks different and ideas are presented more spatially. So again, if you like PowerPoint and you use that in any of your classes, I would highly recommend Prezi. Again, Prezi.com, super easy. It's open source in the sense that you can share your presentations. They go public if you choose for them to go public, and then you can type in information in a search term in Prezi, and you can find all sorts of presentations on They Say, I Say, every single chapter, tons of presentations, because a lot of people are using this text and a lot of people are sharing information. So again, when you click on the Prezi, you can scroll through the Prezi, and what it does is it goes through chapter 5 of They Say, I Say, and overviews really the most important information. So this is just another way of going over chapter 5. Reinforce the information from your reading or from when you listen to the chapter. Remember, what we're doing here is we're creating opportunities for our brain to create those neurological pathways, those dendrites, those trees. And one way to do it is just repeating information. We know this is a really great strategy, but oftentimes we don't do it because we're busy or we think we're too busy. Remember, doing this kind of stuff now, reinforcing information for your brain by reading it, listening to it, going over a summary with the presentation, all those steps are going to save you time later, because what you're doing is you're taking the time to open up that brain space to get information in. And so later you won't read the chapter and then ask yourself, oh my God, I zoned out, what did I read? So that's what we're not trying to do. We're not trying to waste our time by not being aware. What we're trying to do is we're trying to be aware of the fact that our brain has this huge capacity, and that if we slow down just slow enough and take our time and be present in the reading and the writing that we're doing, that the information will be retained more successfully. So it works. Just remember that this strategy works. And so again, we're reinforcing the information with the Prezi here. And so you can go through it, you can take notes in your journal, you can capture the important things that you hear said. If there's templates that you really like, write them down in your journal, and that's going to help you. That's going to reinforce information. Remember, note-taking is really important. Okay, so thirdly, it says now it's time to practice the moves from chapter 5 and post to the discussion. So again, you're practicing those moves, and I have an example here for you. So here's an example from a student named Arlene last semester, and she's talking about gun control in the context of the Las Vegas shooting. It's really relevant, and hers is 3 paragraphs. So you can see that's a sample. Your task in this discussion is to practice the moves from chapter 5 of They Say, I Say on your topic, your research topic if you have one. Hopefully you do. If you don't, pick any topic you hear going on and do it with that. And then the last thing is for you to to read and respond to someone else's post. Again, that's a lot of stuff to do, so take your time. I'm going to click back over to the home page. I have about a minute and a half to keep all the information for what's going on this week in one video. So I'm going to go ahead and click on week 12, research essay draft thesis setup. So what's happening in this discussion is what I've done is I've stolen 2 of the templates from They Say, I Say, the back of the book, but also in one of the chapters you'll find these two templates for setting up a discussion. So I always tell writers, these templates are the key to creating an amazing map for your reader in the very beginning of your research. Okay, so remember, in the very beginning of your research essay, you open up your writing by opening up a universe on a topic. And so how well you do that is going to determine, the rest of your essay. This will become a roadmap for your reader, for you as a writer, but also for your reader. Excuse me. So again, you're going to choose one of these templates, and they're different. You can tweak the template as long as you're making the same move. So what I did here for you is I chose the second template. There's 2. When it comes to the topic of blank, I'll just point on it so you can see it. Most of us will readily agree that blank. Where this agreement usually ends, however, is on the question of blank. Whereas some are convinced that blank, others maintain that blank. My own view is blank. So remember, this entire template is going to set up your whole discussion. So right now we're just practicing. You can change it, you can tweak it later in your research paper, but for the discussion, we are practicing the information. So I hope you have a great week. My time is running out. If you want to check out my template on gun control, I suggest